Welcome to day 3 of our conference on disability inclusion and assistive technology. We have an exciting lineup of sessions today, connecting various topics and featuring esteemed speakers from leading organizations. So let's dive right in. Our first session here in Kilimanjaro 3 is hosted by Google, and it's titled Google Digital Accessibility. In this panel, we'll explore Google's latest digital accessibility innovations, the inclusive approach involving persons with disabilities in product design and testing, as well as the business benefits of app developers. Please welcome our panelists, Laura. We also have Christopher and Sarah. We also have Michael here with us, and I'll leave it to them.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashura Michaels from Kenya. I'm the director of the National Youth Council. Thank you for all coming and to listening unto us out of the various ideas which we will share and what the panelists will do in the development of in the digital space. On the ideas as well of accessibility, and we hope out of this session we'll be able to enjoy, interact more, and learn more than before. The first person in our panel is a beautiful woman by the name Laura. She's the Senior Accessibility Program Manager for Chrome and Chrome OS for teams at Google. She has collaborated with engineers, designers, researchers, managers to work with Chrome in enabling accessibility and as well being usable across all platforms for all people with various abilities. She has as well led various accessibility workshops, trainings across the country to visually impaired teachers, advocacy organization, special education classrooms, and as well with her personal experience and interest with persons with disability, she believes that accessibility technology will be able to progress, to help people progress, and for sure, her passion is into the accessibility for the persons with disability. And to the next person, we have a very handsome guy with the major experience again. His name is Christopher.
That's good enough.
He's the head of accessibility in EMEA, leading in the Google in the area. Christopher is the head of accessibility and disability inclusion for EMEA at Google. He's leading in the Google in the area of accessibility, innovation with people, and as well partnering with people in the EMEA sector, specifically particularly focusing on emerging markets. He has more than 25 years experience in the tech world in various companies. For example, Apple, Sony Ericsson, and Disney, where he built the hardware, the software, and services at these companies. So his passion in accessibility, in the intersections of ER and consumers, hardwares, and as well, he's the senior most person of immersive captioning with WFC. We move to our next panelist. We have Sarah. She's working with Google in the marketing space of emerging marketing space to help in inclusion and as well to enable accessibility in the tech world and as well advocate around accessibility in the emerging markets. Her work includes deeply in marketing. Her work specifically, she has worked with Enable and as well supporting technology for students in schools and children who are blind, right? Visually impaired, sorry. And as well, inclusion libraries. She has a master's in managing. She has a master's in managing marketing from Eastern University. In speech and hearing. And also she has a degree from the university. So now, I'm sorry, the interpretation is complex and you have hopefully understood the various experiences our panelists have. So before I start, I wanted them to project a video on Google. There was a video that was supposed to be projected on Google. Anyway, Laura, thank you for coming. I want to ask you, Laura, about a broad question on Google, about accessibility for the persons with disability in a broad, general way. With this space, you've been working with this space, so where do you see us in the future?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Laura. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you all for joining us, everybody who's here. I know this is day 3. It's early in the morning, so thank you so much for being here. I've been at Google for 13 years now, and I've had the pleasure of working on accessibility for the last decade or so at Google formally. And I actually did start my career in accessibility in the role that Ashura mentioned of being the lead program manager for the Chrome and Chrome OS accessibility teams at Google, working on the specific product development and integrating accessibility into the Chrome browser and into Chromebooks. But I actually did shift over, and now I'm on the same team as Christopher and Sarah and Alexander here in the front row, which we call our central accessibility team. And I'll explain a little bit about this, but I wanted to share about the central accessibility team, where my role now is head of strategy and programs for accessibility and disability inclusion. So we have what we consider to be a hub and spoke model for accessibility and disability inclusion at Google. So my prior role, Chrome, that's one of the spoke teams. It's a product team. We sit now centrally, where we work across many, many, many different teams. And we're working on sort of horizontal programming horizontal education internally and externally, particular product development that we're working on with other teams. We work on developer tools, we work on design systems and platforms. There's lots and lots of different things that we're doing centrally to try to best support the product teams and the teams that deal with people processes as well, our human resources and things like that. So we work very closely with these spoke teams, the product areas, like Chrome, like Android, like YouTube, because we've found over the years that this sort of mixture of hub and spoke seems to work the best for us. We know a lot of different companies will do this in different ways based on how they're best structured and what they feel is working best for them. Google now has something like, over 200,000 employees across the world. And we've found that integrating accessibility and embedding it within each of the different product areas and having some experts embedded in those meetings, like back when I was on Chrome, I would be in the general product design launch meetings. I was in those discussions. I used to joke about like smothering them with accessibility, making them think about accessibility, because I had to represent that in the room and help integrate not only, how do we build assistive technologies into our platforms, like, for example, like TalkBack on Android, or like magnification and dictation, and the ways to enable our users to use our platforms, like Chromebooks, like Android, and many other products. But also, how do we implement processes to help the teams make whatever they're working on more accessible? And how do we do it in a standardized way across all the different product areas? So it's no small task, but that is our mission of sort of blending, yes, building assistive technologies, but also up-leveling the accessibility of all of the different products that we're working on, even if they're not accessibility specific. And we work across a lot of different teams, trying to create more alignment and more strategy and more vision. Even though we don't all roll up to the same one person, we're all together on the same mission, which is really important. So there's a lot of work that goes into creating that alignment, which is what we are all trying to do at Google. And in our mission statement of organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful, we really feel like this is such a massive responsibility for us and massive opportunity to get this right. So we're very excited. We are always still going to be on a journey. Accessibility is never done. Christopher spoke very eloquently about this the other day, of how it is a process, and we are always learning. And one of the things, and then I'll stop talking soon, but one of the things that we've learned most about on this journey has been the importance of following the disability inclusion principle, nothing about us without us. So we have many, many Googlers with disabilities, myself included. I have a visual impairment that leads me to use many different assistive technologies. And we have what we call an employee resource group called the Disability Alliance, which is now thousands of people strong. And it's employees with disabilities, it's caregivers of, parents of children with disabilities, or people caring for their siblings or their parents. It's also allies. And it's been a very interesting dance of how do we work with the Disability Alliance to sort of give us the feedback internally about our products, about our processes, but also not only rely on the voice of Googlers with disabilities, but really seek community feedback, really partner externally through user research, through being at conferences and engaging and meeting people. And how do we just really bring the voice of users with disabilities into Google and help amplify it to shape our products and shape our processes? So that's been something that we've really tried to prioritize, of everybody just maintaining nothing about us without us and integrating the voice of the community. So I'll pause there, but feel free to add anything else.
Wow. I have taken in just one important thing from Laura. Nothing for us is worthless. Without us is worthless. Learning is a process. So that's why we are learning, and we should keep on learning. So we move to my friend Sarah. About the accessibility journey, Can you tell us how Google has tried to address the need of the emerging markets in Africa? And can you explain unto us how it can give us, and you can give us the challenges which you're facing and the opportunities that Google is having out of the emerging markets, on the emerging markets?
Okay, thank you. Let me actually add, you like the general mantra of nothing about us without us, and our disability community at Google has added also, and nothing without us at all. So it has two parts. So in terms of Google and addressing the needs in emerging markets, this has been my primary focus at Google for the last couple of years. You heard that universal is part of our mission statement, universally making information universally accessible and usable, and it's a big world. And we want to address this bigger world. And in order for it to be universally accessible, obviously, we need to pay attention to the 80% of the world that's in emerging markets. And a lot of what we do is immediately and already available to the world. And here we are in Africa, and everybody knows and is learning a lot about what applications Google has that are relevant to the communities here. But there's also a lot that Google can do and needs to do to improve accessibility and also make people in Africa aware of it and gather information from Africa that will make our products better. So our deep involvement in Inclusive Africa is a critical part of that strategy, both in terms of us learning from the community and making sure that the community knows what Google has that might be relevant in Africa, and also so that we then get feedback from the community here about what we can do to make things better. And so, we need to know what you need from Google applications, how they can improve and make them even better suited for communities in Africa. And we've had a number of sessions here where we've talked about some of these technologies, and we are available to continue talking about them and hope that the dialogue continues after we're not here. We've been doing a lot of research remotely, just from our bases in other parts of the world. We studied literature that describes the lives and needs of people with disabilities in Africa, but we know that obviously studying the literature is not enough. And so again, doing our homework so that the community doesn't have to completely inform us. We've done what we can remotely and now really need to hear from people who are actually in Africa. We're also driving a number of products where Google assistive technologies are being made available here in Africa. We are working, you'll hear actually Christopher speaking in another hour or so about projects that are really going to have a deep impact, we hope, in Africa with assistive technologies and mobile technologies. We are also driving a project with Enable, the organization that has created this conference. And I'll steal a line from Michal when she talks about being the proud CEO of Access Israel, and I'll say I'm a proud board member of Enable, and that's another opportunity to learn and engage. And we are working with Enable, which was created to do a lot for blind schools in Africa and create digital learning. And we are just on the cusp of a project where we're making Chromebooks available to kids in school, so that in addition to the digital learning that they had during, say, an hour of computer lab, they'll now actually have computers with them all the time. And we're excited to do the research around that and see the impact that has on their academic and social abilities. And finally, in terms of things that we're doing that we hope will be of benefit to Africa, we want our assistive technologies to be available in more languages, and again, the languages that are most relevant to these communities. And we're also very collaborative with other companies working with them about how can we create speech recognition in more of the languages and make sure that African languages aren't left behind as we advance speech technology. And with that, I'll stop on my emerging markets piece. Obviously, this is the topic I'm most passionate about, so assure you, you asked me the thing that's closest to my heart, and so I could talk about this for a long time.
This is Christopher, and there's just one thing I wanted to add to this.
Chris, will you like to add something out of it? Will you like to add something?
Yeah, may I please? I'm sorry. There's just one thing I wanted to add. The work that's happening in Africa, the work that we're starting to and that we're doing is really an extension of the nothing about us without us. We are all people. We all have passions and needs and desires, and we can't build technology for people with disabilities or anyone without that kind of engagement. So it's a further extension of the inclusive design. We're just making sure we include a larger group of people. Rama Giraro, who's spoken so eloquently here a couple of times, has this wonderful expression: if you design for the edges, you get the center for free. So what we just need to do is redefine what those edges are and take it to mean the whole world. It's a scary amount of work, but if you don't do it, it won't happen, because these things have to be intentional. They have to be planned and done in collaboration.
Wow, 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 wow. What I've gotten from Sarah, it's very, very important for us to work and the word that she used, if you want to hide something for an African, kindly hide it inside the book. That's what people say. That's what people say. That's what people say. So you need to go to the ground, get the information from people. So without us, we can't leave any person behind. So we have to move all along. And from Chris, wow. From your CV, you have a wide experience in the tech world. When I grow up, I want to have the same knowledge in regards to tech. So you can tell us kindly, why is Sony not anymore around? The Sony Ericsson phone is not around. Sarah, you spoke about your accessibility journey. Before you've spoken about working with Enabled in Kenya, right? Can you tell us how our small organizations, which we have, can help can work with a big firm like Google to understand the needs and the opportunities available? Did you get my question? Oh, Chris, maybe you can answer that.
Okay, I think the place to start is one of humility, to understand that you don't know what you don't know. And then you identify problems that are common between platforms, common between organizations, and share it. We found the best way to help the community is by engaging with the community, but if we were to solve something at Google and not share enough information, other platforms, other partners can't actually help. So we actually collaborate together, as Sarah mentioned, to identify opportunities and solutions to help the broader community. So we start from a place of humility, realize we don't understand it. We identify problems. We collaborate with the people that are impacted by these things. And then where appropriate, we also bring other partners in so we can do these things together. An example of this is the Accessible Speech Project, which is something that's launched in the past year, where a number of the big tech companies, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and one other. There's 5 of us, trust me. And we decided to work together and create a broader voice model data set. So voice-based technologies can understand the needs of people with disabilities, because what's happened, for people who sound like me, white guy from California, these technologies work really, really well. But if you're a person with a non-typical speech pattern, for whatever reason, they don't work as well. So we realized with this technology, we wanted to help everyone, so we collaborated with these other companies to create this common data set that could be used for research, that could be used for applications. And together, we're going to be creating something that could be helpful for everyone, for the benefit of everyone, because we're collaborating together, everyone gets to benefit.
Yeah, if I could add something to that. What Chris said is very critical about working with other companies and having seen what they're doing with the atypical speech and all of the companies collaborating. I've become addicted to this consortium model with other companies. We'll get things done more quickly, we'll get things done less expensively, and also we've all established in our companies, these big tech companies, we might be competing in other areas, but in accessibility, we are extremely collaborative. We're all on this journey together. When one company does something that succeeds, it advances the world of accessibility. We all learn from this. I even like the gentle competition, so that when they do something that Google hasn't done, we're able to use that and say, hey, you know, Microsoft just did this. We can't do less. They told us that they do the same. So it's a wonderful collaborative competition, but competition for good.
And if I may add also, we do see so many examples of this, and in a space where we would, again, typically be considered competitors with walls up, there are no walls, and it's such a beautiful partnership across different organizations. Another area where, and I think it's so valuable throughout this conference, we haven't only been talking about all the positives and all the progress, but there has been room to talk about the challenges. We are all still facing challenges in this space, and one of the systemic challenges that we continue to face across industries is that people are entering the workforce not knowing what accessibility even is. And this is sort of a gap in education, a gap in knowledge. All of us here at this conference, for the most part, yeah, we know what this is. We are dedicated to this. We're spending our lives on this. But many, many people don't, and it's not even being taught in schools. It's not being taught in, in higher education, in master's programs. There, some people specialize. Maybe a few programs have this embedded. But we're seeing that this is one of the systemic challenges that we're facing. So about 6 years ago, a group of us got together to form what is called Teach Access, which is now an official 501c3 nonprofit. And it's this beautiful collaboration of so many different companies, tech companies, but now also many, many other companies, as well as many different universities and higher education institutions, and then a number of disability advocacy organizations as well, all coming together with this idea of how do we infuse accessibility into the curriculum of computer science, of design, of many other disciplines. And we're getting this off the ground. It's been about 6 years. It's now an official nonprofit, and we are officially opening the doors internationally. It was sort of US focused as we began, but there'll be more and more about Teach Access that's going to come out, and we're going to be looking specifically to figure out how do we get higher education institutions involved across Africa as well. But I mention this more so as an example of we're all facing these systemic challenges similar to the Speech Project, and it only can help us if we come together and work on this together.
If I could add one more point.
Go ahead.
You'll stop us if we're going too long. But just in terms of getting the word out, we've talked about engaging with universities, we've talked about engaging with other companies, which might be our competitors in other areas, but our dear friends as we share accessibility best practices. We also work with the NGOs or NPOs, the nonprofit organizations, in terms of sharing information and getting information from them as well. And we're very involved in an organization called Disability In, which is primarily based in the US, but is also broadening globally. And they connect us with other companies that might be earlier in the journey than Google. And so we're constantly, I've been put on any number of calls where they say, so-and-so is struggling with this problem. If you have struggled and fixed it, can you share? If you struggled and are still struggling, can you share that too? So that's just another outlet for us to communicate, share, and to the extent that we can, help raise all boats.
Ah, nice. Wow. Wow. From out of the panelists, I think I have captured, you cannot work alone. That is what I have gotten from what you've said. For you to achieve a bigger picture of something, you have to move forward with others. The most important thing is work with people who have the same challenge, and they'll give you more idea onto what you want to produce. So because they are the people who know the pain that they are having. So having in mind that you are working with these people clearly indicates that you shouldn't leave these people behind. So, and in regards to the accessibility, systemic challenges, right? Can you, how can you tell us, how can we advocate to have disability inclusion, you yourself at Google, because you face various challenges every day, and people, how can people, all people, be able to access your services? Sarah, or?
I can start and then, okay. There are a lot of challenges. so as I mentioned, we are still on a deep learning journey. But what I'll say, since it's been about a decade for me pushing accessibility within Google, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, but we are on a goal to transform culture, and that is no small task. Years ago, when we first started in this space, when I started, there were only a handful of people working sprinkled throughout different areas of the company, tirelessly pushing. Such passionate advocates who just were trying so hard to make change. And it felt like, I think back on those days, and it felt like we were hamsters running on a wheel, going nowhere, just pushing and pushing and pushing. And I realized over all the years, and we've all sort of come together on this, that it can't only be bottoms up. We can't only push bottoms up. We have to have a strategy where we also have top-down support and prioritization, as well as sort of middle-out prioritization. It has to happen at all levels. And we talk about this concept of how do we get accessibility and disability inclusion valued and prioritized at all levels. And that's something that we try to weave through our different programming when thinking about, okay, how do we create sponsorship across our directors, our vice presidents, our senior vice presidents, and our CEO? How do we educate them on what the challenges are? Because oftentimes, it's not like people just they don't want to just leave out people with disabilities. They don't know. They are ignorant of the needs and the challenges in many circumstances. And it's up to us to tell the story in a compelling way. And whatever way that may be, you know, there are so many different components of the argument for why to prioritize accessibility, whether it's from avoiding lawsuits, to generating sales, to doing the right thing for humans, to creating opportunity. There's so many different parts of the argument. And you kind of have to learn of when do you use which part of the argument and the pitch. And we've definitely been experiencing that and figuring out that the true power as we've gone, of course, numbers help, metrics help. Sometimes metrics are hard in this space, as we know, but the storytelling and the impact on the individual person has really been the thing that has landed the most. And we've been trying to generate more awareness, generate more empathy across our leadership. We're still working on it, but having executive sponsors for accessibility across different product areas, having executive sponsors for our group of disabled Googlers who are actually joining our calls for the Disability Alliance Employee Resource Group, listening to the pain points. If you were in the opening session, Vint Cerf, who is the father of the internet, he is a member. He joins the calls every week, and he listens, and he tries to unblock barriers, which is just so profound to us to think about. Somebody who was one of the originators of the internet cares deeply enough to sit there and listen and then help us. So I think that's been one of the big challenges of how do we intentionally try to get accessibility and disability inclusion really valued and prioritized at all levels. And we're still on a journey, but we're making progress.
This is Christopher. I think we have an opportunity because, sort of piggybacking off things both Sarah and Laura said, we have an opportunity to, and I almost feel an obligation to do what we can to help raise the conversation in terms of what accessibility is, but also how to destigmatize disability. I live in London, and I've been really proud to open what's called the Accessibility Discovery Center. And this is a place inside one of our Google engineering buildings that's dedicated towards accessibility and disability inclusion. It's 1,500 square feet of space, half dedicated to research, bringing the community in so we can have an understanding of the needs and the opportunities and the solutions, and half the space is dedicated towards tech. We have a series of video games that people get to play, literal video games. There's a car racing game that you can do with your eyes. We even have FIFA, where you can play with your chin and finger switches. And it's been really wonderful watching CEOs and kids from 1 hour to the next playing these games, learning that disability is not disabling if you have the right tools, if you have the right intention. And then we get to teach them about mainstream tech, like the really, really scary deaf alarm clock, which I accidentally put under my pillow and not my mattress, and my wife has never forgiven me. But these technologies are important, and people don't know what they are. We even have stations where we talk about a bunch of the Google demos, but we also show off things that Microsoft does and things that Apple do. So it's not just a Google sales pitch. We share the best practices from many different companies. And what's exciting is we've actually had more than 600 people since January come through from outside of Google. We've had members of parliament, we have had governmental organizations, we've had ambassadors come through, but we've also had local borough school children come by, and we get to teach them. We've had advocacy organizations and businesses. So it's impacting our products, it's impacting the ecosystem and conversation of accessibility across the region. And I just want to put an open invitation to anyone here. I would love to give you a tour, share what we have, and learn from you how we can make it better. Because this space, like accessibility, is a work in progress. We're not perfect. There's lots of things that we can do better. And if we don't include you here, how can we make sure that we're trying to represent the best qualities and opportunities and best practices from across the world?
Take him up on that. He's a great tour guide. Go visit.
Great, yeah, Laura and I had the privilege, so thank you, Inclusive Africa. We stopped in London on our way for a day, and so we got a tour, and it really is quite amazing. So following just up on some of the biggest challenges, it feels like we should have a very solid business case. We talk about 1 billion people with disabilities. As the population grows, we talk about 1.3 billion people with disabilities. So we certainly have numbers in our favor, but as we all know, it's a very diverse group. So it's not as though let's create a product for 1.3 billion people. It's 1.3 very fragmented groups. And so if you're dealing in a company like Google and people are building things, there's always a prioritization and there is a bit of a numbers game. Will 1 billion people use this if I build it? And that's not always true in the accessibility space. So that's one of our challenges. There's also an awareness problem in terms of people with disabilities. As we've heard mentioned, 80% or so are invisible. And so as people are prioritizing, it's really, the numbers are that big? I don't see them. Well, you don't see them because they're invisible. Not all of them are going to be visible disabilities. So that's another challenge. So when Laura talks about being on that hamster wheel when she was in Chrome, it was an important hamster wheel because we need to make people aware. It's a steady drumbeat. It's not going to sell itself. So that's just, you need to play the long game and you need to be patient. Also, Laura mentioned VinSurf on the calls. If you can get yourself high-level sponsors, heck, now Christopher has parliament members. The high-level people are terrific also because as VinSurf listens to problems of our community, he says, oh, that's a problem? I'm shooting off an email to the CEO this afternoon. That's something that most of us will do at our own peril. You don't shoot emails to the CEO unless you're VinSurf. So getting those people in the mix is good. And then finally also, Teach Access was mentioned, and that's great, because the goal is our company should be bringing in people that are already trained, and that just as we don't bring people in as software engineers that don't know computer science and we teach them ourselves, there's some level of training you should come in with. Teach Access is doing that, but even within our companies, we need training, and we've done a lot in terms of creating accessibility academies so that engineers, program managers, everyone within Google can go through these trainings.
Interesting. Interesting. We all have challenges, and the solution and to these challenges will never start from the top, because Chris has said clearly, kids are also very important people in the foundation of our future and in the next generation, and we must recognize that we should teach them, and Chris must tell us how can we convince these senior-most people, the parliamentary people, because to convince them is not that easy. Anyway, moving forward, we have an opportunity to influence you guys in ideas in how we can collaborate and how we can solve these solutions, the problems. The challenges brings up opportunities, and these opportunities create innovations, right? So back to Chris. So we've had people talking and talking about AI. What is AI? How many years has AI been there since it was started off? What has it achieved? And what does the future look like for AI?
AI has been around for decades. It was one of these things that felt like it was never, ever, ever going to happen, and then all of a sudden it did. At Google, one of our first experiments with AI, specifically around accessibility, was YouTube captions in 2009. It was the first time we've ever tried to have automated captions, but they weren't great. But we learned something that's not great is better than nothing that's perfect. So that was one of our first steps in terms of this progress, not perfection process. And we got better, we invested in it, and now we have 14 different languages with a much, much better captions than we've ever had before. We've had it moved into Google Meet, so Google Meet can now provide real-time captions with high quality. It's even starting to do translation and transcription, so the technology, all AI-based, gets better and better. When it comes to technologies for the blind, one of my favorite applications is called Lookout. It uses the front camera, computer vision, and machine learning to be able to describe objects, and this is the stuff that Alexander demonstrated yesterday. Was that just yesterday? Goodness. The stuff that it uses computer vision to describe text and objects and things around you, so it makes the camera an extension of the things that you want to understand of the world. So the AI technologies have been around for a long time. About 8 years ago, things really started to take off. And now we're on the forefront of this new language model-based AI, and we're just at the beginning. A really exciting thing happened a couple of months ago where Be My Eyes embedded GPT-4, where you can now use one of these models to recognize things around you and not be required to have a human on the other end of the camera. This is just the first step. In Google Lookouts, the application I mentioned just a moment ago, we recently announced the ability to have what's called a visual QA, a visual question and answer of images. So you could share an image that was sent to you, and it will describe it to you, but it'll describe it to you in a very human style. But you ask questions, for example, say I share a picture of a dog on a beach with a ball in his mouth. It'll say, there's a happy dog on the beach, and you can say, what kind of dog is it? And it'll tell you. You can ask, does the dog look happy? And it'll say, the dog looks happy. This is really different than the technology we had just a year ago, where the AI would say, there is a dog, there is a beach, there is a mountain. So the nature of this technology is evolving extremely rapidly. So I really can't wait to see where it goes in the next 2 or 3 years, because it has the true potential to transform the lives of everyone, but in particular the lives of people with disabilities, once we make sure that the community is involved in terms of the data involved in terms of the algorithm development. It has to be done thoughtfully and intentionally in conjunction with the different communities. Laura?
Yeah, just to add a little bit, I think it's come so far, and we're only just sort of skimming the surface, I think, when it comes to AI. Intentionality is going to be critical, not just for Google, but for everyone in the AI space, because we're thinking about these are still humans with our own biases building technology. And again, how do we go back to this idea of bringing in the community and nothing about us without us? And as we go into these sort of chat-based AI interfaces, we've had a lot of interesting discussions internally. And for example, we had one of my dear colleagues who is autistic was raising concerns about, okay, asking the chatbot, what is it like being married to an autistic person? And not liking the response. It wasn't a response that was too, it didn't sit right with her. She helped to rewrite it. And then we said, hey, we need to keep seeking feedback on and again about some of these really nuanced discussions about disability, for example. And we've been rallying our internal workforce of people with disabilities and perspectives, and rallying people externally who are in open betas about keep training the models, keep breaking down the biases, but it's going to be an ongoing thing. And I'd also say, I'll just add one more example of, on Chrome, a few years ago, we built this feature called Get Image Descriptions. And this is using machine learning to try to understand what's in an image. So kind of similar to Lookout on Android using the camera. Chrome is looking at an image across the web saying, okay, appears to be blah, blah, blah. Happy puppy, my favorite. So the thing is, we had a lot of different debates about this feature, about are we causing harm by adding this feature? Because if we add it, it makes it easier and lets developers off the hook. And how do we encourage inclusive, accessible design through and through and make it easier for developers and designers to know how to do this, while also recognizing that 90+% of the images across the web do not have alt text. So it's a really bad experience for people who are blind and low vision using a screen reader, missing out on all of that important context. Sometimes it's not important, sometimes it's critical for what you're trying to gather from that site. So we tried to find the right mixture of, okay, we're gonna build this bridge for now, but still figure out how do we keep encouraging and incentivizing developers to do the right thing, and how do we embed this into more of the developer tools and UX tools to, again, keep encouraging, keep making it easier. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a delicate dance of give and take with AI, and still relying on humans and knowing these are still being built by humans, and just being intentional about addressing those biases.
Time check. We have 10 more minutes.
Just want to add
Go ahead.
another couple of points, another topic that we're all very enthusiastic about. AI, there's a lot of controversy around AI, where it's going, what impact it'll have. But there is one piece that is incontrovertible and can't be denied, and that is that people with disabilities need to be in the room. If indeed these are statistical models based on probabilities, you can't say, well, 80% of the community seems to like it this way or that way and leave out 20%, because that's going to exclude people with disabilities. So we need to be extremely intentional. There have been some situations where people with disabilities were not involved in the design, in the training data, in the evaluation, in the testing, and things did not work out so well. And so critical that people with disabilities be in the room at all phases of these projects and product development. So implore you, when you hear about opportunities to test, to give feedback, to participate in design, be there. It's important, and this may well be the future.
Wow. Out of the ideas that you guys have given out, Chris said, AI has been around in 8 years. So for around 8 years, right? Decade. Oh, 8 decades, like
there.
80 years. So, wow. I know it will be a better world, but will we have jobs? Will we have jobs? Will jobs still be there? But it's okay, anyway. As long as we have all people are included and no one is excluded. That is what is important. So thank you, Laura, Chris. It is better something than nothing. When we see the little steps which you are making, we really appreciate out of your efforts, because everything happens with a step and a step. So if you're saying it's 8 decades now, we know the future generation has a better tomorrow. And as well, Sarah, thank you for you saying that feedback is quite important, because it will enable us to achieve whichever thing that we want to achieve. So I want to give an opportunity to 3 people to ask questions, maybe 1 minute to each person. So the moment you will be speaking, kindly be specific to your question, and then the panel will answer, okay? So just 1 minute each out of the 3 people. Where are the women in the room?
Hello.
Where are the women?
Right, nothing about us without us.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Ashura, for moderating today. Sarah, Laura, Chris, thank you so much for your words today. It is very exciting to learn of your technology, and it's a beautiful vision for the future. My question for you is, people going to school to learn and to get knowledge, yeah? They're working hard in schools. But now this introduction of AI technologies, I'm wondering what and how do you envision education that will look like, what education will look like in the future? I mean, walking into a room and having everything ready, research, I only have to ask a question now to GPT. They'll give me information about technology as an adventure. If I just type in some few words, it'll tell me everything I need to know. So I'm wondering, what is your vision for education in the future concerning AI?
Let's get all the questions. Kindly note them down, then we'll just answer them at once. So,
thank you so much. My name is Jared Katanda, Director Science TV. My question is, how inclusive is Google? If, for example, I'm deaf or I'm blind, how easily can I access Google services? Number 2, I wish to know the percentage of disability in your workforce. Thank you.
okay, we had another hand.
Good morning, my name is Edmore. I wanted to ask if you are a place where someone can go and learn about all your projects that are there for accessibility. Like, you can just go there and say, I want to review, to see all the projects that Google has for accessibility.
You got the questions, so maybe you can start answering them. Thank you so much for the questions. So if time allows, maybe I'll give you more opportunities, but let's first answer the questions, okay?
I mean,
Is it okay if we go in reverse order?
I don't know, could we just sort of riff on each other?
Yeah. So the last question is a really important one of where to go to learn about our different product offerings. A few places. So google.com/accessibility is definitely a good site to take a look at. There are also lots of different product sites. So for example, Alexander mentioned in the presentation yesterday, the Android site of android.com/accessibility has just been totally revamped, and there are different pages specifically for different disability categories. So those would be definite places to go, but we also have an external facing newsletter, which we'd love for you to sign up for. And you can get the form to sign up at g.co/A11y/news. And I'll say it again, but then we also have a QR code. Come find us afterward and I can give it to you. But g.co/A11y/news. And we actually just started a new video series, which we're doing every few months, where we're basically trying to collect in 5 minutes or less what are the latest highlights across all the different product teams. So that's on YouTube, and we are going to be putting another one out in early July, I believe. You'll see me on there. Get tired of me, but yes, we've got lots of different ways to stay in touch. We also have a Twitter account, which is @GoogleAccess, where we're trying our best to sort of keep funneling out updates. Just because I know there's so much happening. There's so many products. This is one of the challenges that we face, actually, of how do we get the word out there and how do we generate awareness? So lots to discover there.
Okay, great. Questions about how inclusive is Google and how many people with disabilities are there at Google. So as we keep on saying, with respect to everything, this is a journey, this is progress, it is not perfection. We do a lot to be inclusive. Laura had mentioned the Employee Resource Group, Disability Alliance. We have accessibility and disability inclusion this year. It's going to be a full month of talks and presentations. So lots of opportunities to celebrate, lots of encouragement for people to be open and bring your whole self to work about disability. How many people with disabilities there are at Google is always a complicated question because people define disabilities in different ways. We do a self-identification campaign and encourage people to self-identify because, of course, there's no way to automatically do it. That information is not stored, so it's only voluntarily supplied. The numbers that we have with the voluntary supply is typically between 6 and 7%. Given that this is self-identification, I would assume that the number is actually much higher. But if there's somebody who doesn't need assistive technology, has an invisible disability, may or may not disclose. So I would hazard to guess that it's the same as what they talk about in the population overall. If we could include people on the autism spectrum and so on, that we're probably in there with the 15%.
And just one quick thing, it's six.
Okay.
One quick comment. It's 6 or 7%.
A few minutes, so maybe 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah.
6 or 7% of survey respondents, and it's a voluntary survey. So, and again, we've had to talk a lot about, well, why are we, like, what's the incentive for somebody to self-identify? And how do we tell that story internally of how we're using the data to try to drive change? So that's an ongoing journey for us as well. We could talk about for an hour, but I won't. So go ahead, Chris.
5 seconds.
Before, Chris, you answer, there are some online questions which have been addressed to Chris. There is someone who's online in regards to the data, how you collect data with persons with disability. Maybe you can answer that together with the question that was asked in the room.
Sure. So when we do collect data, it is done in a GDPR compliant way. All of our processes are very thoughtful in terms of where data is allowed to be located. So we follow the laws in that way. Whenever we do our work with different communities, whether it's disability community or not, it is always done with consent. They are always incentivized to do this, or people are thanked with an incentive for the work that's being done. There can always be more, but we try to be respectful of the person, their experience, and do it in a consented GDPR safe manner. So there was the first question that was asked was about sort of AI and education, and as I said earlier, we're just scratching the surface of what's happening. And so if I were to put on my prediction hat, I could sort of see this hybrid model of human and AI-based education, you need to have both. You can't just be taught by a machine because of biases, because of the nature of technology, and because everyone learns differently. But because everyone learns differently, there is also the ability to have training and automated self-configuring tests and different ways of being taught through AI. So I really see the AI as a supplement to human teaching, not a replacement, because we still need that human connection and the ability to learn from each other. We can't just be connected to a machine. That's not the world that we want.
May I add one last thing? I think that there's a very interesting opportunity to help students find information faster. So when I was young and I lost a lot of my central vision, I remember one of the first assistive technologies that I was using were double-sided cassette tapes, which I had for a textbook. And sometimes, like I remember in my history classes, the assignment would be read pages 19 through 30, pages 55 through 65. It was a mess. There was no way of finding that information. And my mom spent hours bookmarking it and figuring out, okay, this is where you listen, this is where you listen, while I did other homework. Thinking about the potential of these sort of interfaces and how, okay, in a situation like that, you could just get to the content and learn, and hopefully that will free up more space for actual creativity and specializing in skills. So I think there is a beautiful future ahead if we open the doors for it.
Wow, wow, wow. We all want to speak and speak and speak, but the time won't allow us because it was an interesting panel we had, and it was a good opportunity that we have learned a lot in regards to our future, and it looks as well bright when we speak about the tech world. So carrying on, we must have in mind we should not leave anyone behind as we carry on with our lives. To Laura, Chris, and Sarah, thank you so much for making this possible through the support of Google, supporting us also in the panel. MC, thank you. Thank you for the good job. And as well, without two important people there, the spoken and the signed language interpreters, thank you so much. And I wouldn't forget the media personnels. Thank you very much.
And thank you to Ashoka for a wonderful panel.
Yes, thank you, Ashura.
Amazing.
An amazing panel. So without you guys here, then we can, I've had people talking about Alexandra. So this is Alexandra. So when we walk out, kindly we can interact with him. So thank you very much, and that's it.
Oh, thank you, Michaels, for that. Let's appreciate them.
That was